forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful. But I think the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. Once humans develop artificial intelligence, it would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate. Humans, who are limited by slow biological evolution, couldn't compete and would be superseded.
Artificial intelligence is making rapid strides. There's talk of a new evolution that could fundamentally change life on our planet. Artificial intelligence has the potential to revolutionize every aspect of daily life: work, mobility, medicine, the economy, and communication. What exactly is artificial intelligence, and how much can it really do?
Knowing what a network is very important for us to understand what artificial intelligence is. Because artificial intelligence is based on connections, making connections.
So a neural network is a form of artificial intelligence that's been designed very specifically based on neuroscience and based on our best understanding of how the human brain works.
As we learn, our brain modifies what's called the synaptic strength, which is the interconnection between two processing units. The neural network is the same thing.
The neural network actually starts off where you're defining these little layers. Convolutional 2D, linear, linear, linear. These are types of layers that you get in these neural networks. And then you hook them all together.
School can be boring.
You say this layer connects to this layer.
I like hot dogs.
Anybody else like hot dogs? I like hot dogs.
You say this one talks to that next one, the next one talks to that one. And once you've done it, you've built a neural net.
So what do you guys notice forming between us?
It forms a bridge sort of like there's connections in between us, like.
I like that. There's connections in between us. Does everyone here have a connection with each other? Knowing those similarities and voicing them helps us create a network between us. The same way neural networks help computers and machines make connections and learn how to learn things.
It seems like everyone is talking about these websites that use artificial intelligence to generate images. It's all because of a tool named DALL-E, which comes from a startup named OpenAI. You type in a description of something you want to see, and a computer creates realistic images to match. The fun part is you can be really elaborate with your descriptions. The system was trained with 650 million pictures, and the results are some of the best we've seen from computers yet.
So what on earth is going on?
To put it simply, it's complicated. But if you give me 90 seconds, I will give you my best explanation.
For years, machine learning systems have been vacuuming up all the images they can find online and their accompanying text descriptions. Over time, the systems have learned to associate certain words and phrases with certain types of pictures. And now they seem to know enough to be able to work in reverse. Start with a description and get a picture.
So if I type in an abandoned, futuristic, dystopian city, overgrown with plants, bathed in sunlight, it will first come up with this. Now it doesn't look much, but I think there are some clues in here. For example, does it know that the word plants means it needs to put in a lot of green, and that green needs to be low down in the picture? Do all pictures of sunlight it's ever seen involve a single point of brightness somewhere in the sky? I think this is some kind of average of all plant pictures and all sunlight pictures. Next, it uses these broad brushstrokes to guide it, and it slowly adds more and more detail over and over again, until in 100 steps, as if emerging from a fog, you get this, which I think is pretty darn beautiful.
And you don't have to start with a blank slate. Give it a starting face, and you too can grow your own mad scientist in a steampunk laboratory.
Thanks to thirsty streaming services, Hollywood is scrambling to feed demand for premium content, rich in visual effects.
Budgets, time are not growing in a way that corresponds to those rising quality expectations. It's outpacing the number of artists that are available to do the work.
And that's where AI comes in, tackling time-consuming, uncreative tasks like denoising, rotoscoping, and motion capture tracking removal.
This was our first time ever trying AI in a production. We had a lot of footage just by virtue of being on the project and doing 400 shots for Marvel. When we received the footage, which we call the plates, in order to manipulate Paul Bettany's face, there needed to be tracking markers during principal photography. We looked at it, we said, okay, well, removing tracking markers is going to take roughly 1 day per shot. In order to replace or partially replace Vision's head for each shot, and a shot is typically defined as about 5 seconds of footage, the tracking marker removal itself was about 1/10 of that. So on a 10-day shot, 1 day was simply removing tracking markers. We developed a neural net where we are able to identify the dots on the face. The artificial intelligence averaged out the skin texture around the dot, removed the dot, and then infilled with the average of the texture surrounding it. Now, Marvel loved it because it sped up production, they saved money. It's exactly what we wanted these solutions to do. Where the solution was faltering was whenever there was motion blur, when Paul Bettany moves his head very quickly to the right or to the left, there's moments where those dots will reappear, partially because in the data set itself, we didn't have enough motion blur data. Another example would be whenever the character turned his head where his eyes were out of the screen, you would see those dots reappear as well. The AI recognition, it's using the eyes as a kind of a crucial landmark to identify the face. And so if I turn my head this way and you can't see my eyes, well, the AI can't identify that as a face. Again, you can fix those things with more data. The more data you feed these things, typically the better, right? Most VFX is still a very manual process. Characters can be extremely challenging. Creatures, things like fur, hair, those things can be extremely challenging and time-consuming.
One notable example of where the technology is headed are the scenes involving advanced 3D VFX in Avengers Endgame.
Josh Brolin plays Thanos. We captured tons and tons of data in this laboratory setting with Josh. And then we use that data to train neural networks inside of a computer to learn how Josh's face moves. They'll say lines, they'll look left, they'll look right, they'll go through silly expressions, and we capture an immense amount of detail in that laboratory setting. Then they can go to a movie set and act like they normally would act. They don't have to wear any special equipment. Sometimes they wear a head camera, but it's really lightweight stuff, very unobtrusive, and allows the actors to act like they're in a normal movie. Then later, when the animators go to animate the digital character, they kind of tell the computer what expression the actor wants to be in. And the computer takes what it knows based on this really dense set of data and uses it to plus up, to enhance what the visual effects animator has done and make it look completely real.
As an artist, my work, what I do, is a part of me. It's a part of my identity. And these companies have allowed users to generate things that look like I've done it, that look like my peers have done it. And we're going to generate all kinds of things that you never agreed to, that could either be against your wishes, that could be against your beliefs. I would even say that to me feels almost like some kind of parasitical copying, you know? Where it's like, oh, we're copying from another artist, specifically to look like that artist. Oh, but it's slightly different, but it sure looks like that artist did it, huh? It's concerning.
Come a time in the future, maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's 15 years, but you will see networks that are going to be able to do really creative stuff. Again, that's not to suggest that you remove talented artists from the equation, but I mean, that's the bet that we're taking as a business.
The technology to do deepfakes is so prevalent. You can get apps on your phone now that pretty much can do a rudimentary deepfake. It's going to be interesting in the future. Are we going to have to put limits on this technology? How do we really verify what's authentic and what isn't? There are sort of social repercussions for it as well that I think that we don't quite understand yet.
The spread of false information, shown here in orange, and correct information, seen here in blue. Sinan Aral has studied these patterns on Twitter more closely than anyone else.
False news traveled further, faster, deeper, and more broadly than the truth in every category of information that we studied, sometimes by an order of magnitude difference. And this was particularly true of false political news, which was the most viral category of any type of false news that we studied.
Fake news.
We are fighting the fake news.
As you say, fake news.
Ask a question, sir. Go ahead. Sir, can you state...
Deepfakes are videos where a sophisticated AI algorithm has learned a model of one person's face and then superimposed it on top of another person's face.
How about this? Simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit.
Made by the comedian Jordan Peele, showing people just how good a deepfake video of a public figure can look.
It's the right question to ask. I mean, look, I mean, the first thing I step back and say, when I look at all productivity data, I look at all economic growth data, I sort of look at that and say, God, we need something to help us. It's not like we're, as a world, growing at inflation-adjusted 3-4%. If we really have the dream that the 8 billion people plus in the world, their living standards monotonically should keep improving year over year, what is that input that's going to cause that? Like what, we need, and we have some tough challenges, right? When you think about energy transition, let's just take that for an example. Essentially what we are saying, at least the way I, as a layperson, understand it, is you got to take 250 years of chemistry and compress it into some 25 years so that we can then make it to the other side. If that is the case, computational chemistry is going to be super important. And so applications of AI to that is probably the way we're going to make it. So I look at it and say, we need something that truly changes the productivity curve so that we can have real economic growth. And then if you have that, there are all kinds of things that we can talk about, which is what does it mean to displacement, which will be real. After all, there was displacement in the Industrial Revolution. We went through lot of hardship to come up with even an understanding of how to deal with it. This time around, we have that understanding. So therefore, I would say, first, let's not fall into what is the lump of labor fallacy. If you don't fall for that, then what are all the new jobs? What is the training required?
This is a fascinating story we have for you of a senior Google engineer who says one of the company's artificial intelligence systems has become a sentient being and was thinking and reasoning like a human being. A spokesperson for Google said that while chatbots can imitate conversation, they are not free-thinking. But what made the company's former employee speak out? Well, let's bring you some insights into that. I'm joined by our technology editor, Zoe Kleinman, who is with us here today. Zoe, what is all this about?
It's a fascinating story, isn't it? So Google created an artificial intelligence project which it called Lambda, and it was designed to generate chatbots. Chatbots are the things you see when you go online. The little box pops up. Can I help you? Can I, book your flight? Can I advise you? That sort of thing. Google wanted to make them as realistic as possible. It spent about 5 years now creating this. The senior engineer says he had a chat with it, a conversation. He kind of interviewed it. He's published a really long blog, but it's a very interesting read in which he asked it a series of questions. And the responses that it gave were fascinating on a range of subjects. So he asked it things like, do you like the story of Les Miserables? And this chatbot talked about feeling sorry for one of the characters. It talks about being afraid of death, being afraid of being switched off. It talks about understanding feelings of happiness and sadness. And it's just not what you would expect, is it, from something that has been created to generate speech?
I mean, one of the responses, I've never said this out loud before, but there's a very deep fear of being turned off to help me focus on helping others. I know that might sound strange, but that's what it is. It would be exactly like death for me. It would scare me a lot. I mean, are we talking about a sentient being?
So you and I are humans, and this is tugging at our heartstrings, isn't it? You know, what an emotional thing to say. The engineer, Blake Lemoine, says it was like talking to an 8-year-old child in terms of its ability to communicate. I have to throw a bit of skepticism on it here. You know, bear in mind, this is a chatbot generator. This is exactly what it was trained to do. Google says in a blog post about it that if you think about how we communicate with each other, you know, we elaborate on subjects. If I say to you, I had chips last Tuesday, you don't say that's nice. You say, oh, I had chips on Thursday. You know, we are sort of programmed, if you like, to communicate in that way. And that's exactly what this chatbot is doing. Google says it's run loads of tests and it cannot find any signs of it being sentient.
And Google is accusing this engineer of sharing proprietary property. Now, what is that? What happens there? Zoe?
Well, so this belongs to Google. This is a project that Google has created, and it argues that in sharing his work, he is leaking company information, essentially. Now, he says, I'm not leaking company information. I was having a conversation with a member of staff, because one of the questions he asked is, how would you like us to treat you? And this chatbot replies, like an employee of Google.
So interesting. Zoe, thank you so much.